Do you have a story to share with the world? Of course you do. We all have stories to share. An Anchor podcast allows you to share your interests in a way that connects to others all across the globe. If you have been considering starting your own podcast and don't know where to begin, Anchor makes it easy to record, edit, and publish with the click of a button. You can even add music. Whether it's crime dramas, self-improvement, paranormal adventures, or tips about parenting, you too can share your unique imprint on the world. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. You've got this. I believe in you. Welcome to the Existential Empath Podcast. My name is Tanya, and I am an intuitive empath. My intention is to share valuable tools and techniques that I have learned so you can tap into your own inner healer naturally and intuitively. Welcome back, everyone. I have Liam Naden here with me today. Liam is a speaker, teacher, author, and researcher who helps people understand how to create true success by using their brain the right way. So Liam is the host of Using Your Brain for Success, as well as Growing in Love for Life. Welcome, Liam. Thank you so much for coming on my show today.
Hi, Tonya. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very honored to be here.
Right. So today we're going to talk about the secrets of the brain and what we haven't been taught. So I used to work in the intensive care unit at a hospital, and I used to work a lot with brain dead patients. So I worked a lot with the brain stem in the back of the brain, and, but I am also working in subconscious mind. So I'm really excited to see what are the 4 parts of the brain and what we haven't been taught and how we can utilize that for success. So I guess let's start off with, what are the 4 parts of the brain, Liam?
Actually, before we get into that, can we cover something a bit more basic, which is, what is a brain and what is the purpose of our brain? Because I think, we all have, we're brought up to think, oh, well, yes, I've got a brain and it makes me think and it does stuff and, it keeps me alive and all that. And then if you get a little bit more into it, you might be introduced to ideas, well, we have a subconscious as well as a conscious mind, and we can, in our brain, we have beliefs and all of those sorts of things. But no one's actually really explained to us what the purpose of the brain is really and how it really works on a biological level.
Yeah.
Because what really struck me, and I've studied all sorts of different things about how to be successful, it's a thing that really consumed most of my life, is how can I be better? How can I improve myself and be the best that I can be and have a great life and be happy and rich or certainly successful?
And what does success mean? I think for everyone, that's a different ideology anyway, in itself.
Well, actually, there's biological success, which is the same thing as what success means for everybody, actually, but we can even come to and talk about that as well a bit. But, what is this thing called the brain, and why does it exist, and why do we exist? And as I say, I studied all of these things trying to understand how to be successful. But the thing I missed and really struck me as odd when I finally, after years of trying and struggling to figure this out, struck me as so obvious, is no one's really talked about the fact that we're biological. We live in a biological world. We have a biological organism, which is our human body, which is a little bit odd because nature actually runs everything to do with our life. If you walk off a cliff, you're going to go down. That's it. That's a law of nature. We're governed totally by the laws of nature. So although we're not just biological, we do live in a biological, physical existence, and we operate under the same terms and conditions, the same rules, the same processes as the rest of nature. And so if you really look at what nature is, nature exists for one purpose. Everything that's alive has a biological purpose, and it operates in one way. It's wired and it's structured to do one thing, and that is to survive. Yeah. All of biology is attempting to strive. And how does it survive? By being the best that it can be. All of nature is striving to be the best that it can be so that it has the greatest chance for survival. And so it doesn't matter whether it's a plant or a tree or an animal or an insect. If you really observe what they're doing, they are being the best that they can be to ensure they have the greatest chance for survival. And all living things have a mechanism or an organ or an apparatus, if you like, whose sole purpose is to do that, to ensure that that organism is the best that it can be so that it has the greatest chance for survival. Now, it turns out that we're no different. We're biological. We operate under the same biological laws. And we actually have a machine designed, or our biological purpose, I should say, is to be the best that we can be as well. That means not just physically, like most of the rest of nature, but also mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Because you being the best that you can be means being happy. Being your most resourceful, creative, imaginative, that's all your mental, emotional, spiritual qualities, not just physical. So in a very real sense, we are designed to be the best that we can be, which means to be happy, fulfilled, living the greatest life possible. That's our biological purpose. And the rest of like the rest of nature, we've been given a mechanism and a machine or an apparatus whose sole job is to make sure that happens. It's our brain. Every biological living thing has a brain that its sole job, sole purpose is to ensure that that being or that biological creature is the best that it can be, having the greatest chance for survival. So again, you know, this is all pretty obvious stuff, but no one's ever really explained it to us that your brain is a machine designed to make sure that you're the best that you can be. You're happiest, and you're not living with problems and stress. Your brain is designed to ensure that you don't live with problems and stress, because problems and stress don't help you survive. They actually do the opposite. They shorten your life. You know, there's been a lot of scientific research which shows that stress in someone's life actually damages not only our mental state, but our physical state as well. It shortens your life, literally. And we all know as well that when you're in a stress state, when you're afraid and worried, you make bad decisions, you make mistakes, you do the wrong things. So which don't help you survive, don't help you, you know, further your life in a good way. So in a very real practical sense, this machine that we have, that everything has, the brain, is designed to make you the best that you can be, and it's designed to make you avoid problems and stress because they don't help you biologically. So the really interesting thing is, when I discovered all this, when I worked this all through, I thought, well, why is it that everybody has stress and problems? If they don't help us, if stress and problems don't help us biologically to survive, and therefore our brain is not really, or shouldn't be, trying to give us stress and problems, because our brain is designed to make sure that we are the best that we can be, why do we have stress and problems? And then I thought, well, there can only be one logical answer. Because if you look at the brain as a machine, which it is, it has one purpose. You know, what is a machine? It's a mechanism designed to achieve an outcome. So if you look at a motor car, for instance, that's a machine. What's the purpose of a motor car? Only one thing: take you from where you are to where you want to go. And it's going to do it efficiently, predictably, and it's going to give you a comfortable ride. That's what it's supposed to do. But what happens if it doesn't do that? What happens if you don't have a comfortable ride? What happens if it doesn't run properly? What happens if, when the engine creates all these problems? Why does it do that?
Problems and stress.
Yeah. Why does it do that? Only one reason: it's not being used the right way. Whoever's operating the car, they're not putting the right fuel in. They're not using maybe they've got the handbrake and the foot brake and the accelerator on all at the same time. Maybe whatever they're doing, that's what's creating the problems. It's not built into the machine to have problems. The machine is not designed to have any problems. So it's exactly the same with the brain. It turns out that problems and stress in your life are, just like with any other machine, the result of not using it the right way. And, you know, just like with a car, just to carry on the car analogy, because I thought about this and I thought, but, you know, everybody has stress and problems. So it's a little bit like you driving your car. You put the wrong fuel in because everyone else is putting the wrong fuel in. So it's not running right. It runs really roughly and it doesn't go very well. And you're not driving it the right way. You're putting your foot on the accelerator and the handbrake at the same time, and it's moving along roughly, and it's just not, it's a really uncomfortable ride. But you look around and everyone else is having the same experience. Everyone else is doing the same thing. They're putting this dirty fuel in. They're not using the levers and things right. So what happens? Everybody tells you, well, this is just the way it is. This is normal. This is how driving a car actually is. And you get all sorts of people who develop ideas on how to make your ride a little bit more comfortable with still the wrong fuel and still using it the wrong way. And they say things like, what you need is you need these leather seats, and you need some air conditioning, and you need a radio, and you need all these different things that'll make your ride more comfortable. And then you have other people who are, who can fix the car when things break. And so there's all this activity, all this energy, and nobody's enjoying the ride, and everybody's saying, well, this is just the way it is. This is just normal. Cars, this is the way, it's driving a car is difficult.
Like, I'm going to ride my bicycle.
Yeah, it's just not a pleasant journey, but that's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you knew that, if you saw that happening, you go, well, this is crazy. All of these people don't realize they're driving the car the wrong way. If they knew how to do that, they wouldn't, and they were putting the right fuel in, they wouldn't have all these problems. They wouldn't need all of this stuff. And it's certainly not normal. And that is also, if you look at the rest of nature, there are no problems. There's no stress and struggle. There's life, there's death, there's growth, there's decay, but it's not a struggle. It's only us humans who've created this thing called struggle. And we're the only ones who are using this machine, this perfect machine, designed to give us this perfect life so that we're the best that we can be for biological survival. We're the only ones who are not doing it right.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that.
Who's ever told us how to use it?
Yeah, I just watched a documentary last night about how animals are very highly adaptable to their environment. Like if they, if they're in a situation that they're struggling in, they will learn to adapt and they will shift themselves. Where I think us as humans, we create resistance and restriction and all these things to make it so much more difficult, where animals, even with trauma, animals, when they suffer trauma, they'll shake it out. They'll move that energy through, where us as humans, we hold it in. We create these barriers and boundaries upon ourselves. And so, we aren't even utilizing our bodies correctly, to stay with the analogy of the car. If we aren't maintaining it properly, then it's just going to wreak havoc, on our brain, and then in return on our body, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And so, yeah, it's just us as humans, we have a more difficult time being more flexible and adaptable to our environment. And we do shift, but it takes a little bit of struggle sometimes for us to get there.
Well, the rest of nature does it naturally.
Yes.
That's what nature means. We don't do it naturally. We're not, and it's because we're not understanding how to use our brain, because obviously we can think, we can, apply logic, but that has in some ways messed everything up, because we've been given all of these ideas from the day we were born, perhaps even earlier, that are simply wrong about what life is, about how you're supposed to live and how hard you're supposed to do things and how you're supposed to struggle and figure stuff out and plan your life and try and do all these things, and all coming from a state of confusion and force. And there's a big difference. Nature is full of power, but not force. Yeah. We're a bit the opposite. We're full of force, but it makes us disempowered rather than more powerful. And it all comes back to this biological machine that if we just use it the right way, and I'm glad you mentioned the 4 parts to it, because I've created a model for how your brain works, which is based on science. And there's lots of technical explanations. This is all based on the different parts of the brain, but I've broken it down to a model that anyone can understand quite simply without technical jargon. And what we find is, one of the things when I realized when I researched this model, we have actually been taught this in religious traditions, particularly the Bible. The Bible is a very good instruction manual on how to use your brain.
Really?
Not from an airy-fairy point of view, but from a practical point of view. But we haven't interpreted it the right way. And once we understand how the brain works, then we go, now I can see what I'm doing wrong. And I can also see how I've been taught through religion and other spiritual traditions, how we should use it, but I haven't been using it the right way.
Interesting. And even in our education system, it's like, I was a very creative person, but I was really forced to be very logical. And I had a hard time balancing that out as a child. And I think as an adult, I'm learning to tap into that left hemisphere, of the brain a little bit more. So that's really interesting that our upbringings, whether it be, through our education system, our religious system, or whatever it may be, is actually training us to act in a certain way, but we are perceiving it incorrectly or in a different, perception. That's very interesting.
Yeah, well, perhaps I'll get into explaining what the four parts of the brain are, and I think the lights will go on for some of your listeners, at least, how this works. All right?
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
dive in. I'm
Okay.
really excited. I'm really loving this conversation.
Yeah, me too. So anyway, there are essentially four parts of your brain, and these are all physical, different parts of that are located inside your head. This isn't a sort of a theoretical, imaginative thing. This is biological. The mechanism of the machine, the workings of the machine. So the first part of your brain, it has a technical name, but I call it the thinking brain. Mm-hmm. And your thinking brain's located on the top of your head. It occupies quite a large physical area in your brain. But the purpose of your thinking brain is to gather through your five senses, in other words, everything you smell, taste, touch, hear, or see, every idea you get, every thought you get, in every moment of your life, your thinking brain takes this in, makes sense of it, and stores it in what is essentially a large database or a large library. It's the storehouse of all of the information that you pick up through your life in every moment. That's the thinking brain.
Okay.
And you can use that information for various purposes. One is to communicate with other people. One is to make sense of things. You look at something and say, that's a tree, not an elephant. Mm-hmm. Okay, because you've got all this knowledge about that you've picked up in your life to tell you that it is a tree and not an elephant, or to put that label on it anyway. So that's the thinking brain. The second part of the brain, which is located just below the thinking brain, is the feeling brain, the emotional brain. And this is obvious, again, it's pretty obvious what this does. This manages how you feel, your emotions. It determines how you feel in any moment, from anything from excited, wonderful, happy, all those great emotions, to fear, stress, and worry. This is all managed by your emotional brain. The third part of the brain, you mentioned the brain stem. It's what I call the survival brain at the back of the head. And this manages everything to do with with just staying alive, your survival. So obviously that's all of the automatic things, your heartbeat, your organs functioning, your breathing, and all that sort of stuff. But there's one other area, the other thing that your survival brain does, which is a very important part of your survival. And that is to do with, remember I mentioned earlier that the purpose of our life is to be the best that we can be, to be our happiest, feeling great, life's going well, no problems, no stress. That's the way we're supposed to live. But there's only one time we're not supposed to live like that, and that is when, on the very rare occasion, there might be something that comes unexpectedly into our environment that could be a real threat to our survival, something that could injure us, hurt us, or even kill us. And 50 million years ago, whenever it was that the human brain was developed, they were all over the place, but they don't exist very much now. But that's like if you go back to prehistoric times when they're walking through the forest and the lion jumps out from behind the rock. So what the brain actually does then is it recognizes that that's an immediate threat to your survival. It's a danger to you. And what it does is it activates part of your survival brain to deal with that situation. And it kicks in this thing that we sometimes call the fight, flight, freeze response, to direct all of your attention to getting rid of that danger. So you run away, or you shout out for help, or you stand and fight, or whatever it is. And the way it actually works is your emotional brain makes that decision. You mentioned the amygdala, that's the emotional brain, and the hippocampus. And that says something in your environment, it's making a decision in every moment. Is your environment safe or is it dangerous? And if it's safe, it sends out good, happy feelings in the way of neurotransmitters or hormones, whatever you want to call it, chemicals that make you feel good. And when you're feeling good, you're being the best that you can be. You're living your life purpose. Everything's going great. But if it sends out a message through the feeling of fear, that is a warning saying you are faced with an immediate threat to your survival. So what literally happens is your emotional brain sees a threat, immediate threat to your survival. It sends a message in the form of fear, which activates your survival brain and gets you to deal and react to this danger. Now, the idea is, of course, as I said earlier, you get rid of that danger really quickly and then you go back to feeling good. The brain then says, your emotional brain, right, everything's fine, good, go back to being happy again and living to be the best you can be. But what actually happens when when the survival brain or when the emotional brain activates this reaction is that it draws all of the energy that it can from the rest of your body and the rest of your brain to deal with that threat or that danger. Now that's really important, because if you need to run away from a lion, you're going to need you might need every ounce of strength you have.
Yeah.
So it literally takes away energy from everywhere it can, anywhere that's unnecessary, and directs it to dealing with that threat or the danger. But what's one of the places that it takes away energy from is the part of your brain that is actually where you feel good and happy and being the best that you can be. Because that part of your brain is the fourth part of your brain, and it's what I call the creative brain. Mm-hmm. And this actually has physical locations in your head. It's not just an imaginative idea. In your creative brain, and science has actually more recently really started to research this and discover that it is a separate part of your brain physically. But your creative brain is what makes you the best that you can be, because this is what controls your creativity, mm-hmm. your imagination, your higher awareness. When you're using your creative brain properly, you see the truth about who you are in a much bigger and more expansive way than what most people think. Most people think they're this sort of limited little victim of circumstance. You're not that at all. You've got an infinite machine, your brain, which is designed to give you this great life, and it will do that. And you can see that it's doing that when you're using your brain properly. So this is the part of your brain that raises your awareness. It's where your motivation is. And it's where you get all of those aha moments or insights, intuition about things, where you can see the right thing to do and the wrong thing not to do. Uh-huh. So you make much better decisions. You make the right decisions when you're using your creative brain, because that's what it's designed to do, is to guide you to do that. Mm-hmm. This is where your motivation also comes from. And when you're using your creative brain, you're much more productive. Yeah. This is when writers or musicians, composers have said, I just heard the music and then I wrote it down. I don't know where it came from, but I just heard it. It didn't come from my thinking brain. I don't know where it came from, and they just wrote it down. So all of this stuff is tapping into, if you like, an infinite intelligence, which is where your creative brain is aligned to using all the resources of literally the universe to ensure that you're the best that you can be. And it also has things like, which on a low level of awareness, when you're not using your creative brain, you'd say things like, oh, that's just luck. That's coincidence. That's a synchronicity. Wow, how did that happen? But when you realize that your brain literally has the ability and the purpose to manage your life, to make sure that you're the best that you can be, you realize there is no luck. There is no coincidence. That's what it might appear. It's like from nature. A low level.
Yeah, you're in that flow state. Yeah.
It's called in the flow, in the zone.
Or in the
We've
zone.
all had this experience, yeah. And this is how you're supposed to live. You're supposed to live in that state all of the time, being the best that you can be. And that means being happy and not having problems and stress to deal with. But most of the time, of course, when you're using that part of your brain, you do make the right decisions. You don't make the wrong decisions, because your brain is guiding you and managing this whole process for you. But as I said, there's only one time you're not supposed to live like that, and that's when the lion comes running out from behind the rock. All of that is shut down. Fear is activated in your system, and you get into this very reactive, very narrow state where all you can see is from a very limited perspective. You don't see the big picture, you just see the lion. And your brain is designed to look out for any problem that it can in your environment. So you have a very negative perspective on your situation. Yes, there's the lion. How big is the lion? How many teeth has it got? How loud is it? How's it going to attack me? What's that noise? Is there another threat? Is there a snake in the grass? Your brain is designed to do this, to pick out every threat to your survival and to make sure it doesn't miss any of them, because you might die, so that you can go back to being in your natural creative state, being the best that you can be. But what the real problem is, and how people are using their brain the wrong way, is their brain has activated a state of fear. Remember, a state of fear, all that, and that includes anxiety, stress, worry. That's all driven as its undercurrent by fear. What's actually happening is their brain has interpreted their environment as being dangerous. It's activated fear, the feeling of fear, which activates this very limited reactive state. And they're trying to solve their problems. They're trying to create their life. They're trying to figure out what they should do with their life. They're trying to make the right decisions from the wrong part of the brain. It's not designed to do that. All of that stuff, making the right decisions, knowing what you should be doing what you love, avoiding doing the wrong thing, having an awareness, having creativity, being the best you can be, that's all in your creative brain. And people don't realize fear is the bad fuel going in. Mm-hmm. If you feel bad, if you feel fear, stress, worry, anxiety, what's happening is you're activating the wrong part of your brain. And there's no way you can create your ideal life from that state. So what's the answer? It's only one answer. You've got to do everything you can to get rid of fear. Mm-hmm. Because if someone came along to you with the wrong fuel for your car and said, this is how it runs, you go, well, hang on. Someone comes along and says, here's some hydrochloric acid, put that in your car. You go, no,
like, no.
Sorry, that's not how it works. They say, well, look, everybody else is thinking about putting hydrochloric acid in their car. And if you really believe, and if you're motivated and determined, and you try this technique, and you can see the car running perfectly, it won't be a problem. And you go, look, I don't know what planet you're from. You just don't understand how the machine works. Yeah. Doesn't matter how justified, how many arguments you give me for putting it in, I realize it's going to mess everything up if I do. And it's going to be harmful. It's just not going to give me the result I want. And that's what fear is. Mm-hmm. And people have become, if you like, got to the state where they think fear is justifiable. Yeah. I've got all these problems in my life. You have to be realistic. You have to stay informed of what's going on in the world. You have to be sympathetic to other people. You have to believe that problems are natural, that stress is natural, and you have to just try and overcome all the hardships of life without realizing that's not the way it works at all. Mm-mm. Doesn't matter how justified you feel. If you allow yourself to feel fear, stress, worry, and anxiety, you're blocking off the part of your brain that's designed to make you the best that you can be, and that holds the key to everything in your life. And this is what I realized, because in my mid-40s, I went from being a multimillionaire to losing everything, becoming homeless. Had to move in with my elderly mother and sleep on the sofa in her living room in her small apartment. And what I realized was, didn't matter how much other stuff that I'd learned. If I had fear in my life, I was going to mess it up, because with fear, you can't see the big picture. So what I teach now and what I share with people is, when you understand this about your brain, you make fear the enemy, and the stakes are too high to justify having anything in your life that makes you feel bad. And we do have the choice. We've all got the choice as to who we talk to, mm-hmm. what we talk about,
what we listen to, what we watch. Yeah. What
we choose to switch on the TV. I don't know if anyone watches TV anymore, do they? Or the computer or whatever.
I guess that's all fuel, right? We have a choice to choose what fuel we're putting into our bodies.
Exactly. And something makes you feel bad, what you've got to realize is, if I allow something to make me feel bad, I'm finished. Yeah. Because it's activating the wrong part of my brain. And I mentioned the Bible earlier. What does it say in the Bible? It says more than 360 times, someone's counted, be not afraid. It doesn't say try not to be so afraid, or don't worry so much, or it doesn't say fear and worry are normal. Mm-hmm. It says be not afraid. That's an instruction. It's the instruction manual saying, when you get into the car, you turn the switch on and you pull the lever and you do that. It's the same. You don't be afraid. You have faith. You trust. You believe. You let go.
Because then where does the God-fearing person come from? That fear of God, but yet in the Bible it's telling you be not afraid. It's like, that's kind of funny, because at least here, in the States, it's all about, I'm a God-fearing person, so but
if you look at the Bible, but it's not really a God-fearing thing. I mean, God is this loving Father in the Bible.
Absolutely.
This God-fearing thing, I think that's more of a construction that has come later. And it's not part of the original teaching. The original teaching says you will be looked after. It says, do not, in Matthew, I was a Christian when I was brought up a Christian, so I can quote the Bible a bit.
Yeah, no, I like that.
And I look at it from this perspective. But it says in Matthew, Jesus said, do not worry about what you shall eat, drink, or wear. It'll all be provided for you. Look at the lilies in the fields, how they are provided for. How much better are you? You will be provided for. You don't need to worry about it. Give no thought for tomorrow. It doesn't say sit down and write out a goals list and try and figure out your life and worry about and struggle to try and get it.
5-year plan.
It says it's all going to be given to you. Because it also says, seek first the kingdom of heaven and everything else will be given to you. What is the kingdom of heaven, you ask? says in the Bible, the kingdom of heaven is within you.
It's within you. Your temple.
It's the way you're using your brain. It's feeling good. It's feeling happy, because it also says to enter the kingdom of heaven. In other words, that's within you. To access that, you have to be like little children. And what do little children do?
Joy.
They're in the moment. They don't worry about things. They're not planning for the future. They're not feeling stressed and afraid and anxious and trying to figure it. They're just doing what we're supposed to be doing, and what the rest of nature is doing, which is just enjoying the moment, being present, being ourselves.
Until
being
they're taught not to enjoy the moment.
Well, that's what I said at the beginning. We've been given all these wrong ideas about who we are and how we operate, and unfortunately, they're just not true. Well, fortunately, they're not true.
Exactly.
So there is another way to live. There is a way to live without struggle, trying to solve problems, but believe that life is a struggle, and that is to understand how your brain actually works, what it's designed to do, and how it operates. And it operates without fear. That's how it really operates. And people say, well, how do you let go? Because that's pretty scary to let go. Scary? Fear, maybe? When you understand it, and then you start to see it at work. In other words, when you start to trust and realize that there's a creative part of your brain, that this isn't your thinking brain. Remember, your thinking brain's limited to what you've already learned. It doesn't know what you really want. It only knows what you think you want, if you like. And when you start to access this, and you start to see the results in your life, that better things show up, better people show up, things that you might have called coincidence and luck, you start to see, or you start to get an experience of how it actually works, and then everything accelerates, and then life becomes a different experience, a natural experience, which is what it's supposed to be.
Exactly. And so, I do a lot of emotional freedom techniques. So it's, I teach people too, that emotion of fear will arise in that emotional brain. And then you can go to the thinking brain and ask yourself, is this a legit fear? Is this a fear that was taught to me? Is this a belief? Is this legit? And then if it's a legit fear, then you deal with it. But if it's not, then it's like, okay, let's breathe through that. Let's move through that. Let's shift that belief system. Let's shift that train of thought, move ourselves into that creative brain, and I learning a lot too about the brain heart coherence. Greg Braden, he talks a lot about this.
Right.
And when you're in that creative brain, you are really connected to that heart space. And so that's why it feels so relaxing and so peaceful when you're in that flow state, because you are connecting the other organs, to the brain as well, because the brain is like that hub. It's the hub of, everything. And it's really just learning the brain first, so then you can connect with the other organs in the body, because if you're fearful in the brain, it's going to affect your heart, your liver, your lungs, your everything, so if you can eliminate
it's the control center, that's for sure.
Like the CPU. Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because about working with people to help them through their fear, because there's really only two things you need to do once you start understanding how the brain works. And that's a really critical thing, because people say, well, I don't really believe this. It's not about belief, it's about knowing. And our whole lives operate on belief or knowing. For instance, we know that when we're driving down the road, we believe that the cars coming the other way are going to stay on the other side of the road. We don't worry about it. We just expect that's going to happen. We expect we're going to breathe in 1 second, or that our heart's going to beat, or that the sun is going to rise tomorrow. So, and why do we believe those things, yet we don't believe that we've got a part of our brain that's designed to make us the best we can be? Well, only two reasons. One, we don't understand that that's what the brain's supposed to do, or how it's supposed to do it. And the other is we don't have much of an experience of it actually working. But once we understand how the brain works, then you think, okay, I really get it, that fear is the wrong fuel and it's activating the wrong part of my brain. So I'm going to shut out everything that's in my life that I can that makes me feel bad, and then see what happens and allow my part of the brain to do its job. And then you see it in action, that it is actually bringing you different circumstances, different people, much better things. Your problems go away, or you find the right answer to actually solve them at long last. And then you start to understand that that is how it works, and that's the beauty of it. And then when you do, you don't need to believe it anymore. You just know it's true. So that's where the two ways to do that, after you understand it is firstly to say, fear is the enemy. Whatever it is, I've got to find a way to stop it activating the wrong part of my brain, because what's at stake is my life, is me being the best that I can be, which includes me being the most loving, contributing to others, which is all part of your survival instinct as well, is to contribute to others. It's survival as well as your own. So you do everything you can to ensure that you don't have fear. And then, of course, what you mentioned is the other thing. Once you've stopped the fear coming in, you've got to start dealing with what's my brain already still afraid of. Exactly. Because your brain's still there. Even if you got rid of all of the fear, your brain is still going to make up all these imaginary lions. You know, you've got to teach it the difference. Well, you've got to, it's learned that life is dangerous, that there are all these threats to your survival all the time, because we've been bombarded by all this negative stuff throughout our life, telling us how dangerous life is and what a struggle it is, and how hard you have to work to fix things, and you have to put your nose down and just work. So you do need to find a way, and it sounds like you're doing a lot of that as well, to help people separate, or help their brain to separate, because not what you think. You think, why am I feeling stressed and worried? Why did, someone comes along and says something to you, why would that make you feel bad? Unless they're going to break your kneecaps or something, they're not a threat, what they say, yet it still makes us feel bad. Exactly. But our brain is interpreting what they do on some strange level with it being a threat to our survival. So we need to help our brain distinguish the difference between those things, so that it only sees the real lions, not all the imaginary ones. And then you find most of the time you live in your natural creative state. And it is, I call it a natural creative state, because it is your natural.
It's organic.
It's supposed to be natural. It's not supposed to be difficult. We make it difficult by allowing all this negativity to keep activating the wrong part of our brain and keep sending the wrong information into our brain about what life's about. But once you stop doing that, you live in a much more natural way, a much more expansive, in the flow way, and you realize that you are in tune actually not only with yourself, but the rest of the natural world as well. And life becomes what it's supposed to be, which is a fun adventure, not a painful struggle that, you can't wait to get to the end of sometimes.
Exactly. And then I know for me, when I started conquering my fears and working through that process, my body started to feel better. I started to feel lighter. I started to shed weight. I started to, just because everything was coming in alignment, everything was just rebalancing itself out. And, it started with my thoughts, my thoughts. If my thoughts were negative, then my body would respond, to that. But then once I started to release the fears, I worked in a trauma center. So I saw a lot of death. I saw a lot of trauma, tragedy. And my subconscious mind thought that was normal. It thought that what I was seeing on a daily basis, death after death after death, was normal. And so my body started to react, and it was just locked up, all the time. And so when I left that job, it took me a couple of months to get to a point where I had to retrain my subconscious to be like, what those images that I saw, that was maybe 4%, of reality. I had to literally shift my reality. But with that said, my physical body was still into that response, that fight, flight, or freeze response. So, but once I shifted the fear in my mind and got to a point of calm and peace, then my body started to respond that way too. And it took a little bit of time, but once I figured that out, it was like, whoa, what a shift in perspective, what a shift in reality. And so, if people are living in that constant state of fear, their physical body is going to tell them, and what's 95% of stress is, causing our physical
at least, yeah. That is one of the things you're pointing to there, is saying about how your brain works naturally. One of the things naturally is it looks after you physically, obviously, and you find your addictions fall away as well. All of those things that are bad for you, you simply don't have the desire for them anymore. And that's what happened to me, and that's what I've noticed with people as well, is, and it's not that difficult to give it up. People say, like, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't have caffeine, I don't have gluten, sugar, any animal products. People say, how can you live like that? It sounds awful. I didn't even notice.
Fantastic.
I just lost the taste for all of that stuff naturally as I started to move more into my creative brain, because my creative brain was saying, none of that's good for you. So it's not hard. It's not difficult. It's not this, oh, got to stop, I've got to go on a diet, or I've got to, your brain will do that. All of this is natural. It's not difficult. It's what's difficult is overcoming the fear that's stopping you, that you're fighting. You're fighting your natural self when you're in the state of fear. And unfortunately, one of the things is most people, we have these subconscious fears. We don't even know we're afraid. When I was struggling and stressed and trying to build up my businesses before I lost everything, and really pushing and always trying to set higher goals and learn more things and figures, I was driven by fear. I didn't realize it, but I had this unconscious fear that I didn't have enough, that it's something that I might lose it all if I didn't keep trying to get more. And that's a very fear-based pattern that most people live under, which is why this relentless, we've got to be more, have more, do more, it's more. That's not the natural way of things. The natural way of things is if you look at a bird in nature, it walks along the ground and it sees a bit of food when it's hungry and it eats it. It's all there. It doesn't have to struggle and worry about if it's not going to have enough. So you do find that everything comes in alignment once you start using your creative brain, and it's not a difficult, it's far easier than the struggle of trying to figure stuff out and try and force yourself to do things and try and be motivated and tell yourself all these positive thoughts all the time. That again is not natural. We're designed to have a good experience. We're designed to do this naturally. We don't have to have a PhD and spend 20 years in therapy to try and figure out how to live naturally. We just have to use our brain the right way.
Exactly. And we don't have to chase things. Things will naturally attract to us. And I think that's what, once I started using my creative brain more, I started this podcast, and I'm telling you, Liam, within a month, I'm booked all the way out till December with guests. I mean, it was like the universe was like, this is what you need to do. You are in alignment with who you are meant to be. And I am having so much fun and joy doing these shows, and I'm meeting people from all over the world. And, so I do, it's like, once you tap into that creative side, and for me, or it was just organic for me to do these types of things. And I'm not chasing anything. I have speakers coming to me, more speakers than I probably even need, but
that's the way it's supposed to be.
Part.
And you're putting in effort, of course, but it's not a struggle. And there's a big difference between effort and struggle. And we would all like to be in the position where we just love what we do and things work well, and then it's not work, is it, when you're doing what you love?
And it's fun.
Yeah, it's not work. But and that's the way we're naturally designed to be, all of us. Some people say, well, I'm not creative, or it's all very well for you, but I don't know what I want. You don't know what you want when you're stressed. When you stop being stressed, your brain shows you what you want. And not only shows you what you want, it gets you to do it, like you with the podcast. And it gets all of the people you need, all the right things to happen. I know it sounds like magic, but it is.
It is, and it's fun.
And if you don't think it's magic, look at the natural world and tell me that that's not magic. What's going on in every moment around you in the natural world? Unbelievable magic.
Yeah, not the natural world, not the illusionary world that we're being kind of shoved down our throat, through television.
Well, only if we allow it.
In nature.
If you start using your creative brain, if you shut all the stuff off that makes you feel bad. Illusion is only created through fear, because when you don't have fear, you see the truth. You can never be held in an illusion. I know one of the words you use in your description for your podcast is the Matrix, and I'm sure you've seen the film.
Yes.
Fantastic film. And what does it say there? It says you have to let it all go. Morpheus says to Neo, you have to let it all go. Fear, doubt, and disbelief. You have to free your mind. And that's exactly what I think one of the main themes of that film is about as well, is when you free your mind of fear, the illusion all falls away. You see the Matrix, and you don't get involved in it. And you don't have to fight and worry about, problems and what happens if the economy goes down, or you're going to be looked after, as it said in the Bible. You give no thought for tomorrow. You will be cared for through your creative brain.
Absolutely. And observing it, and recognizing, when am I in it? When am I out of it? Where, feeling, into your body, and just having a deeper understanding of what it is, and recognizing too, when you're out of it, you're limitless. You are limitless with what you can achieve with your creative brain. There is no limit to that, and that's the exciting part, is just, to continue to open yourself up and free your mind, like you said, to allow those inspiration, and motivational thoughts to come through. And then you will also start on that inspired action. And I think that's why it was with the podcast. It was like I put it out there and I inspired action, and then boom, 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 here it comes. So I knew I was in alignment, when I started this.
That's great. And all you need to do, if you want to know what your job is, monitor fear. Whenever anything comes along that makes you feel bad, say, I'm going to go the other way. I did, my partner and I, we do this on little things. We go to a restaurant. We went to a restaurant the other night that we'd been thinking of going to, because we're traveling around, so we're not, we don't know any towns that we're in. We just look it up on whatever, that gets some good reviews. And we went in and we sat down and we went, this doesn't feel right, does it? And we'd been looking forward to going to it. We thought it'd be quite good. And we thought, no, this doesn't feel right. So we just got up and walked out. Now, we were hungry. We didn't know what was going to happen. But you become attuned to, if something doesn't make you feel good, you don't let it, that something, you've got to get rid of it to allow the right thing to come along. And of course, he walked around the corner. Well, I think it was straight over the road, actually. Fantastic restaurant, far better than the other one would have been. But you have to start trusting this by saying, my job is to monitor my thoughts and feelings. What's making me feel bad? What can I do to change it? Doesn't matter what it is. It's what am I going to do to stop putting the wrong fuel in, put the right fuel in? And the sign that you're doing it wrong is when you feel bad, unless there's a lion about to chew your leg off. But anything else, you're activating the wrong part of your brain. And that becomes your only real job, is to do that. And then just allow the adventure of your life to unfold.
The way
it really is quite simple.
Yeah. And it's, I've had people on my show, because I've talked about this, how our choices will literally put us in different timelines, different realities. And people are like, that's ridiculous. My past wasn't a choice, and, whatever. But the reality, we have in the now moment, we can make a choice. You either have a choice to hold on to the past and, look at everything that you went through, or you have a choice to make a change right now. And I think that's hard for people, to look at that.
But when you realize biologically that everything is just your perception, is it? So when you're feeling bad, your perception on anything will be negative. When you're feeling good, in other words, when you're activating your creative brain, your perception on everything will be that it was perfect. You will literally see the same event, whether it happened to you or to someone else or is happening, in a completely different way. Your perception will shift. And you can say, well, that's not being realistic. If something bad happened, to something bad. No, actually, what's being realistic is seeing the truth about what that is and what that was, and to realize it wasn't bad. When I lost everything, imagine becoming homeless and spending your life building up security and losing absolutely everything through, all right, it was my fault, but it was, other people were really unkind and ruthlessly, bad, if you like, towards me. And I could have become really bitter and twisted about that. I see it as the greatest thing that ever happened.
Yeah.
And because that's what got me onto a much better path in my life rather than struggling. And that's what got me here, even knowing any of this stuff, learning this stuff and being able to share it and talk to great people like yourself. So how could that ever be? All it is a difference in perception. Instead of being held, and so many people do that, they're held back by a negative perception of something, whereas if they actually let it go, their creative brain would show them the truth, that it is part of the perfection of their life. It was a lesson they learned, maybe so they could share it with other people, or that it could help their life in some way. That's all it is. And whenever you have a problem, one of the things I say to people, like, if you think you've got a problem in your life, and if it is a big problem, or whatever it is, I can guarantee there's someone somewhere else in the world who's got exactly the same issue as you, and they don't see it as a problem. They see it as a gift.
Yeah.
And they're grateful for it. I don't know if you've heard of someone I saw him recently, he's called the Blind Woodsman. Have you heard of him?
No.
Worth looking up on YouTube. He's a man who, I think he tried to kill himself, and he shot himself, and he ended up blind. And he's a wood carver, and he creates furniture with his hands. And what a disaster, a tragedy that would be if you made furniture and made beautiful works with wood, and you became blind. He has turned it around and says the best thing that ever happened to him. It's got him much more in tune with with himself. He creates beautiful stuff from wood. He's got a wonderful wife. And he said, I'm much happier blind than when I was being
Wow.
able to see.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and other people would say, oh, if you're blind, that would be absolutely terrible. That'd be a huge problem. So it is all about perspective. If you forgive the pun, it's the way you see things. And this is the
Absolutely.
same for anybody with any problem. It is your perspective, and your perspective comes from, are you in this limited, fearful, very narrow brain state that can only see the problem right in front of you and sees it as a threat to your survival and can only see negative things?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you in the brain state that sees the wider perspective of who you are and has the access to all the resources to overcome everything and create your life to allow you to be the best that you can be?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes the solution is in the problem, right? It's just figuring it out, moving out of the fear, because fear is a very restrictive, if we're thinking in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration, like Nikola Tesla talked about. Fear is a very restrictive, kind of drawn out kind of frequency. That's why, when we're in that fear state, it's like, oh, this never ends. I'm constantly in fear. Where when you're in joy, people are like, time flies by, because it's a much faster vibration, faster frequencies. So it's just getting out of that fear state, but consciously catching yourself when you're in it. And I think that's half the battle for people, is they've been so programmed to be in fear all the time. And I was when I worked at the hospital. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But if you realize fear has only one function in your life, and that is to tell you that you've got an immediate threat to your survival to deal with and get rid of as fast as possible, that's it. Fear is not designed to solve your problems or to be something that you live in permanently. Your creative brain, that's your biological purpose, is to live like that. So it's not, fear is completely misused. It's the wrong fuel that people are trying to run their cars with.
Yeah.
And so you make it your mission, as I say, I've got to put the right fuel in to get it running properly. You wouldn't dream of, as I said with the hydrochloric acid, if someone gave you the wrong fuel, you're not going to put it in your car. So why are you going to put it in your brain to wreck your body, wreck your life? Your car's nothing compared to your life.
Exactly.
So why would you do that?
Yeah, I love that. And Liam, I could talk to you all day. I love this topic. I think it's amazing. But I'm going to wrap up the show now, because we've been on here for almost an hour. So how can people learn more? How can people reach out to you and connect with you? I know you've written several books. You've got several podcasts. You also work with people in relationships as well. And so share a little bit, about all of the amazing things that you're using your creative brain for.
Well, you can find everything on my website, which is just my name, liamnaden.com. And actually, I've a new book out called Rocks to Roses.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about a plan to heal and transform your marriage, because as you said, I do a lot of marriage and relationship coaching. So I have this new book out about that. And it doesn't matter if it's in real trouble or you just like it to be better, but if it's rocky and you'd like it to be rosy, read Rocks to Roses. And I've also got it's only recently come out, and I've got a special offer with that. With when you purchase the book, and you can get it through Amazon or my website, you also get a new course that I've created, which I sell separately for about $147. It's a full-on course. It's called The 9 Habits of an Unstoppable Marriage. And what that will do for you is remind you of all the things that you used to do when you first met your spouse or your partner that made your marriage or your relationship really good, and you've stopped doing all those things without realizing. So this is a course that brings you back into the 9 habits. There are 9 that I've identified that, again, will really make a massive difference to your relationship. So that's on my website as well. But that's, I guess, a whole other area too. But it comes down to a lot about how you use your brain and observing what you're actually doing and realizing that there's a part of you that runs your life. You don't run it. You think you do. And the thing is, you're thinking. You're using your limited thinking brain and your fear-based brain to try and figure out your life. But that's not really what runs your life. So the more you learn to access your creative brain by eliminating the wrong fuel, not activating the fear-based part of the brain, the better life becomes. And you see it more and more clearly. And you think, why did I drive with the handbrake on? Why did I put the wrong fuel in? What was I thinking?
And how much fear plays in our relationships as well, is being projected back, to
Fear is
us.
the cause of every problem in your life.
Yeah,
That's it. If you really analyze it, it is. Fear is at the heart of every problem in your life. And it's because your brain is doing the wrong things. It's going to do the wrong things. It's just not designed to handle it in a state of fear.
absolutely. Well, thank you, Liam. This was so enlightening. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'd love to have you come back on again and we can talk
I'd
about
love to.
relationships, because I know that's an area many of my clients are struggling in as well. So I thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge and your experience that you have gone through, in your life, and the lessons that you've learned. And I appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you, Tonya. It's been a real honor being on your show. Thanks very much.
You deserve to navigate your life as an empath in alignment with health, happiness, and abundance. To learn more about the services that I provide, including Beyond Quantum Healing Hypnosis, EFT tapping, and the Emotion Code, visit my website at www.thesoulcafe.org.